Welcome to EARLI Research Stories, the podcast that brings you inspiring stories from diverse voices in the world of learning and instruction. Join us as we dive into the latest trends, research breakthroughs, and insights shaping the field today. Hosted by Chris Castro, Rachel Shanks, and Leonie Johan, this is your inside look at the heart of educational research.
Welcome, I am Chris Castro and we are with Tino Endres, who very impressively has 3 affiliations in Europe. He's an active early member involved in some early special interest groups, 6, and interested in instructional design, retrieval practice, multimedia learning, and cognitive law theory. We will talk with him about his research and life decisions to become a researcher. Tino, thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for having me, Chris and Leonie. It's really an honor to be here. I think it's really great that you do this podcast for the community. It's interesting to see who you already had. So I'm very honored to be on that list now. And thank you to you that you do that. I think it's a very nice way to getting to know different people and different approaches here.
Hello, Tino. I'm Leonie Johan. It's very good to have you here. Thanks for accepting our invitation. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about your academic path and how did you end up where you are now? And you might even want to include high school experiences.
Yeah, so actually, when I started my academic career, I didn't think about anything academic at the point. Like my family is not very academic, and when I was 15, I actually considered becoming a chef in the kitchen and not going on with studying. And also later on, when I finished my Abitur or like my high school degree, more or less, then I also thought I would be much better off with like event managing and organizing parties because I enjoyed doing that very much when I did my school years. And then I worked in a civil service. So basically in Germany, you have the choice, or I had the choice at the time to go to military service or to go to civil service and work with people there. So I was working with multiple disability people that I was working with, and that was very fulfilling. And that actually shaped my way into psychology because I was working with a psychologist there, had lunch with him several times, and what he had to tell was much more intriguing than organizing parties. So from there on, actually my way was a bit set, but because I wasn't that good in my A levels because I thought I don't need it. Then I had to take a little detour to the beautiful Innsbruck, where they actually have an entrance exam into the psychology program, which was very helpful for me. Also, in the end, actually, it was from a pedagogical psychology point of view actually really interesting. It was kind of an advanced organizer because for that exam you had to study the first chapters of every chapter in the psychology introduction to psychology book. And that was giving me a very good idea what I'm like can connect things to and like where it's actually organized. So I liked that very much. And then afterwards I moved to Freiburg. Actually at that time I moved for love. That didn't work out well at the time, but for me it was a very good decision because especially this quality of study in Freiburg was very good. I learned a lot there. I studied under Hans Spader and especially under Alexander Renkel, which is also surely my most influential mentor that I had around there. And I worked with Alexander on my master thesis on retrieval practice already. And then Alexander liked my work and we continued working on a PhD on the same topic. And later on, I then thought like after my PhD, I might want to go to Shanna Carpenter to the US and different ideas, but then COVID was around and I really liked working with Alexander. So I actually stayed for my postdoc in there for quite some time until about like 2 years ago, Alexander retired. So I added to my list of affiliation, as Chris said earlier, the University of Zurich. I was working with, or am still working with Sascha Schneider here. I was really grateful, or I'm really grateful to Sascha as he let me work with my projects, also let me supervise my PhD students still in Germany, in Freiburg. And yeah, so it was a great choice for me being here in Zurich. It's a nice big university with a lot of opportunities. And yeah, since February, I'm an associate professor at the Uni Distance in Brig. So just recently got a permanent academic job, which is of course the nice goal. And as Chris said, that is how I ended up with, at the moment, 3 affiliations, working with all those 3 in 3 beautiful cities.
So how can you deal with three affiliations and three different cities in the
Yeah.
week?
That is actually difficult. As you know, like we had to postpone this interview because there were too many things to do at the time. I was just starting there in Brig. And yeah, I think the good thing in science is that we can work everywhere. Yeah, right. We just need a laptop and some not very good noise canceling headphones. And then it's basically set. So yeah, I like to work in the train. I think if you organize the tasks well, then there are some that are just being done better in a train, maybe even because you are not distracted by other things or like people asking you questions. And then like have the meetings at the different spots rather organized. So it's like at the moment not that easy to just like open my door and like walk in and ask a question. But with all the nice online opportunities, I think it is just a different way of doing it. And then we have like more online chats and conversations like that. So until now, I'm pretty happy with how it is working. But I also think that it's not a thing that I would do forever.
I think Zurich is it's mostly known like
Yeah.
well geographically, but Brig is less
Yeah,
known.
it's basically in the middle of the Alps. So if you just go to the southern part of Switzerland, like basically straight down from Zurich, and you are over the first like bunch of mountains, then you'll find Zurich there. Zermatt is pretty close, and then actually it's like very close to the border to Italy, Lago Maggiore, which is also pretty nice. It's the Simplon Pass you have to cross, and then you're over there. So usually the train that I take is ending up in Milan.
Not the worst locations for doing research.
Yeah.
No, totally not. No, it's really nice.
So, Tina, you were talking about Alexander Renkel as your mentor. What can you tell us in general about mentors helping you in your path until reaching this position of three affiliations?
Yeah, so I think Alexander would probably not recommend me to taking over three affiliations. I'm pretty sure about that. And yeah, like Alexander is for sure the biggest mentor in my way of research, and not only the people that he connected me with, but also the way he's thinking about research and about science. He's always like very appreciative of other people's thoughts, and I think this is very important that we keep that interest alive, even if people are using different terms, as we just discussed that before because there are like subject matter educators, students that have a lot to say that we actually have to consider and don't put ourselves into a very high position, which would be very easy for Alexander to do as he is a very renowned researcher. But he never did it like this, and I try to like keep this as a model. And he was always looking at this sweet spot where theoretically interesting things were combined with practical relevant elements. This Pasteur quadrant of like research that is based in practical implication, but also still has the theoretical development in focus. And this is really where I also try to locate my own research.
Thank you, Tino. That's kind of interesting. I would like to kind of link to that and ask how EARLI has participated in shaping your quite impressive career, because you said like that you were involved in some SIGs. What kind of SIGs are they? And how has this involvement helped your current research?
I would consider myself really an active early member. I really like what early is offering, especially in like allocating the different kind of ideas and connecting those ideas, and also to understand what kind of different foci people have. So my home six, so to say, is 667. So basically two six already are home. Well, we focus a lot about in instructional design, and then with 6-7, even more focus on technology aspects which yeah we do more and more, and there where I started my career, and also where I'm very connected still, where most of my research is happening. I was also or am still working with 616 on metacognition, especially my work on learning strategies and implementation of strategy trainings is located there a little bit more. There are more people interested in that kind of work. And recently, I was also working a lot on interest development. And this we basically discussed mostly with the communities of SIG2. I really like that a little bit smaller community too, because 667 is giant, especially at the moment, and still growing. And SIG2 is usually a little bit of a smaller crowd, more people that you actually know when you come there. And I like their understanding of really looking into these basic processes of understanding how we really build mental models. Yeah, I really like that very much. And like to give like the broader focus of early, I think that it is really interesting that the hierarchy in early is actually pretty low. So, like becoming a junior representative or something like that is actually very easy to reach. You just have to speak to several people, and everybody is very reachable there. So that helps, of course, discussing, especially as a young researcher. Like some of the most interesting projects, like I pitched at early and had discussions with people then and collaborated or ended up collaborating on similar topics because the people were that easy to reach. Also, one thing that I like very much at my beginning, like I was going to the jury conferences and I had that nice way of like giving like 1,000 words and then 5,000 words a little bit later, and then I think like 8,000 words shortly before the conference, which really also helped me to like get into publishing. Like you, of course, like get feedback of your mentors and stuff, but you don't necessarily hear how like reviewers think and stuff like that. That was also very nice. So yeah, a lot of the work was actually really shaped by early and the experience that the people that built early were giving me.
Do you have any kind of publications or distinctions you would like to highlight from your research, and why?
Yeah, so I think especially in those recent years, like one work that was especially interesting and also very effortful to do is our translingual work. So we basically developed and translated mental effort and load scales into different kind of languages. And the basic focus, I think, especially at the moment where AI hits greatly and we can basically translate everything into every language that we have, we put there a strong emphasis on the construct validity that is actually around those concepts. So, because at the moment, a lot of the validation studies focus on factual validity and a high Crumbus alpha within your scales. But actually, when we looked into this translingual work, discussing, for example, with Vincent Hogeheide and like only seeing the differences between Dutch and German translations of the famous pass item, we were wondering if this is actually the same construct that we are measuring or if we just like end up translating it in a different kind of way. So in this work, we worked with very different language experts and went through a rather complicated process of really understanding the concept that lies behind those two distinct and very decisive categories. And yeah, ended up with very interesting insights. So, for example, like in the Chinese translation, we have an item in the end which says, I put my heart into and soul into a task, which is, of course, very different for like a German perspective way of saying, like, yeah, ich habe mich angestrengt. It's a very different item, but in the end, it seemed to cover a very comparative aspect of variance in that. And I think this is something that I hope we will go on more often to actually do that effort in translating and understanding those cultural differences a little bit more, because then we're also able to combine that more into more abstract constructs, into nice, interesting theories that actually help us understand learning.
Do you have it like with reference, especially maybe to the German? Do you feel you have it sometimes as a German who does not have English as a native language, I suppose at least, that you have to switch between thinking in German but having your academic language in English, or do you not switch anymore? How would you describe
I
it?
think, yeah, I think I always think in German on a certain point of view. I think it might also be a very good thing to actually switch sometimes because you are a little bit more critical about the construct that you're actually using. Because in some term we use a different term than in some language we use a different term than in the other language. And that might also tell us something about why different kind of aspects, like for example, in like my PhD work, we spoke a lot about retrieval practice, and actually then summarizing this and publishing this in like a more teacher-educator ready kind of way and Unterrichtswissenschaft, we had to translate it, and then it was actually interesting to think like, okay, how do we actually put the essence of this into German, and like what words are we actually using? And that I think showed us something about the construct itself to put it more, more into practice and easier to understand. We speak a lot of English also at home, so more and more thinking I think is happening in English. But I think sometimes I still switch into German.
In more general terms, about education, about research in education, what would you say are the current trends? What are you seeing in your field happening differently or?
Yeah, one very important thing for me, and I also think that's a rather general trend. We see that in like our work into a research group that we are working at the moment, that we look more and more into like conditional effects of learning behavior. So we don't look into the easy aspect of like what works, but more on this conditional effects of what works when and for whom. So we really consider what kind of factors are around it. And I think this is it's a little bit more complex. And sometimes we might avoid that kind of more complex thinking if, yeah, because it's more difficult to publish, you have to like write a more complex narrative around that. And that's also why we sometimes maybe even socialized to like avoid this too complex thinking. But on the other hand, I think it's very important to do that kind of differentiation on when something is happening and go into those more complex answers. And I see a lot of research actually doing that more and more often and more critical. And I really like seeing this. Yeah, and I also think that this is reflected in like kind of a second trend. I have the feeling that this like big age of the untheoretical media analysis, so a media analysis just summarizing whatever is like codable. It's also a bit like over. I see more and more of the meta-analysis and also like other people working on theoretical work again. I really like that trend because I think there are some advantages in theory development.
Do you see like journals going with these developments? Like, do you feel like they kind of give more space or ask for different topics?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's a matter of space sometimes, because I think like concise speaking and having a good narrative is super important in publication still. But I think for a lot of the things when we speak with teachers, for example, yeah, we tend to like say like always use retrieval practice, and then that doesn't really end up in like helping the learning of those students because they say like, okay, when do I have to actually really do that? And I think that we look much more into those cases now, like when is which learning strategy applicable. We also see this in cognitive load research, where we have like principles that have to be fulfilled. But actually, when we look into detail, then we see, okay, those principles might not be that overreaching overall. We have to like consider when are they helping, when are they actually might be hindering learning, or when are which principles more important than others. And I really like that aspect, and I think that more and more journals go there.
So we have this question that we ask all of our guests. How do you achieve work-life balance? What tips can you give our audience?
Yeah, yeah, I think this is really a mean one to finish. Because I really think that this is definitely one of my bigger challenges. My bigger problem here is that I really love my work, and this usually leads to the tendency that I work a little bit too much in the usual sense. But I also don't feel that it's actually real work because I like to work on the things like with the people that I work with. And I also consider myself very fortunate there that I can pick the topics that I work on or the people that I work on and might even like change them from time to time just because I have the feeling this is what I want right now. And not necessarily anyone that telling me that this is not a good idea. So I really like that aspect of research. But of course, that comes with the risk that you work a little bit too much and don't really consider those kind of aspects. And yeah, I'm a bad example there. I'm pretty sure I didn't take any year all the holidays that were available because I just didn't want to. I did have to. So yeah, that's definitely something that I should work a bit more on. What I really do and what I really like is that we can be very intentional about the setting where we put our work. So if I do something that I know is might be a little bit more strenuous, like revisiting a revision that you just did and reading your paper for the 50th time, then I usually like to sit close to Zurich Lake and let the sun shine in my face and read the stuff there, or have a scientific debate, not only on Zoom, but maybe also at a conference, engaging with a friend and a glass of wine and a couple of beers and discussing. And I think those social aspects also maybe count back and lead to more overwork, but also it doesn't feel like that much of a work, and you really can do the extra hours that we usually need to actually get it done very well. Especially with me, I think that the problem is also that my partner is also into research. And so also sometimes at the dinner table, we end up discussing something that just happened under the day. And yeah, that we try to make it more deliberate and also switch topics to like speak about different things, especially on the weekends to not do so much. But we sometimes also just opt in to say, okay, we want to get back ahead of things. So let's just use that one Saturday, that one Sunday to go back. Summarizing, I think I'm still looking for the tips myself, and then get yourself into like some routines that actually help you do different things. I like going cycling, and I know that I didn't do that recently as often as I would have liked to do it. So maybe with the upcoming spring now, I'm getting back to it. So I'm definitely listening closely to that question when all your upcoming podcasts are getting out to also get some additional tips from myself. I think it's an important issue, and thank you for raising that. But yeah, I definitely have to work on it a bit more.
Maybe as a follow-up on that, Tino, how do you decide what kind of projects to take on? And is there sometimes that you say no to something, and then why?
Yeah, so probably if you would ask someone if I say a lot or no, then probably the people would say that I don't. I mean, a lot of the topics that we are like discussing with people, we also shape into our directions. So I think that's why most of the topics that we get involved are actually then also interesting for us because we can shape them in that kind of way. And I think that the inspiration of project is very like, yeah, very different. Sometimes you just read a paper and there is an idea that you find intriguing and you go with it. Sometimes you see something in everyday life and you want to like follow up what is actually the basis of this. Or maybe sometimes you read that paper that has a bit of a too easy answer and you wonder if this is really where things are going on. So I think there are always like different reasons to doing this. And sometimes it might even be a methodological aspect that you think like, okay, are we actually assessing the same thing here? So yeah, it's very different. So I don't really, yeah, I think when I have the time to push something forward, I usually do. Maybe even a little bit too much going back into this work-life balance aspect of it.
I hear a lot of motivation, which is very nice. What would you say is the main motivation for actually doing your research?
I think it's probably just curiosity and really knowing like what's going on, what is happening, and also like wanting to do it and understanding it by yourself. Yeah, I think it's a lot of curiosity that's actually driving it. And then the nice aspects around it, I was already speaking about a lot of those aspects before, like the social interaction with people is definitely also a very big driving force. Having those very intelligent people around you, having the exchange with them, having them challenge you, challenging them, that is very intriguing to me and very motivating.
Thanks, Tino, for accepting this invitation. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for having me. It was a big pleasure to talk to you guys, and I'm looking forward to what's happening in your podcast next.
Thank you, and good luck with maybe finding a better work-life balance or
Yeah.
listen to our podcast. But it's also very good to hear that you just enjoy so much what you're doing. Very nice. So thank you very much for this joyful conversation.
Listeners, make sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and stay tuned for the exciting episodes we have coming your way. See you next time on the EARLI Research Stories podcast.